everybody is free to talk. And the party cannot be responsible for the utterances of everybody.
Not quitting yet. ODM all guards set to square it out with party young talks.
Ban means it's like a curfew. If you 6 o'clock, we are not supposed to go out. We haven't banned. All we have said is people must comply with the Gazette notice of 17th December.
And let's meet in court. Bus operators to challenge the ban on night travel.
Also, police vetting resumes in the quest to reform the force.
Plus, a gloomy picture for teachers ahead of crunch talks with the TSC. And welcome to our comprehensive coverage of the day's news, business and sport here on KTN Prime. Thank you for joining us. I'm Nancy Kachimera.
Happy New Year from me on this first Tuesday of the year 2014. My name is Ben Kitili. Thank you for joining us on KTN Prime.
Well, let's begin. A showdown looms between the party Old Guard and the Young Turks of the Orange Democratic Movement.
The party's National Executive Council meeting today resolved to hold national elections between February 28th and March 1st. KTN Samogina has the details.
The Orange Party goes back to the drawing board to restructure the once giant party. After losing Deputy President William Ruto and UDF's Musalia Mudavadi, then Deputy Party leaders, ODM is on the overdrive to strengthen its roots at a National Delegates Convention that will elect new leaders, often viewed as the party's appointment in their respective regions.
Bribery, ethnic incitement, hate speech, and thuggery will lead to automatic disqualification from such elections.
The party faces an immediate hurdle of containing the youth uprising from within that seeks to grab the mantle from the old guards. The incumbent leadership faces criticism of misguiding the party, causing it to flop in the March 4th elections. Nonetheless, the old guards are still not budging.
And we believe that this party is still the most popular. What messes us up, and unfortunately for me to speak about it, is actually the nomination process. That, in my own opinion, I've said it before, I always say it, and I believe it is sometimes, very flawed.
Elections are not general elections. They're really internal affairs of the party. So I'm going to be discussing with the members of our party.
Raila Odinga remains the uncontested party leader ahead of the National Delegates Convention, to be deputized by Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho, also unrivaled. Former Speaker Kenneth Marende and South Mugirango MP Manson Nyamoya will square it out to replace Henry Kosgei as party chair. Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero is to fight it out with the nominated Senator Janet Ongera for the vice chairperson position. It is a crowded battlefield for the powerful Secretary General position, with its incumbent Professor Anyang' Nyong'o still out to retain the seat. Others seeking to elbow Nyong'o out are James Orengo, the Siaya Senator, Budalangi MP Yababu Namwamba, Suba MP John Mbadi, and Kisumu Central MP Ken Oburam.
Incumbents have the advantage of being incumbents, so I don't want to worry.
A third of representation to go to the women, a third of representation to go to the youth, and a third of the representation to remain in the hands of the old guard, who have some critical experience and input that will give us a very firm foundation.
But analysts opine that to fortify the party, ODM should avoid a Western Nyanza axis image of its leadership's inner circle.
I'm afraid that when we go, we see this party ODM going to the elections, that we're likely to see it emerging as a fairly narrow, regional, perhaps even tribal party, with the rest of the tribes, or a few of the tribes, receiving token positions of leadership here and there, very insignificant positions, and that does not do well for any party.
A duel also looms for the position of the National Organizing Secretary between Raila's close ally and Homa Bay Senator Otieno Kajwang and the newcomer Simba Arati, the Dagoretti North MP. A total of 26 positions will be filled in what may be a leadership surgery at the Orange Party.
It is a quest for the Orange Party to fortify its base, but February 28th and March 1st will be a litmus test that will put to test the Orange Party's fabric. This on the age factor, as the youth, that is the young Turks, are out to box out the old guards from the party's top leadership. Samugina, KTN at Orange House, Nairobi.
So the battle lines are drawn in ODM, and the national elections will be held between February 28th and March 1st. And on the big question tonight, we are asking you, do you support the Young Turks in ODM?
And we'd love to hear from you. Send us your opinion by texting us on 22155. You can start with a yes or no and then give a brief comment. You can also tweet us. Our handle is at KTN Kenya, or you can tweet Ben_Kitili and myself at Kachingira. We look forward to hearing from you this evening.
Bus companies wishing to operate after 6 p.m. must adhere to regulations set by the National Transport and Safety Authority, says Transport Secretary Michael Kamau. But as KTN's Betty Kello explains, a number of bus companies have since moved to court seeking to block the night travel ban.
It has been 2 weeks since the ban on night travel for buses that have not met the National Transport and Safety Authority Act requirements. 2 weeks that have seen passengers stranded, with many paying hiked prices to travel as bus operators seek to compensate on the night trips. This crisis is here to stay, following Transport Cabinet Secretary Engineer Michael Kamau's latest announcement that all long-distance public service vehicles intending to travel after 6 p.m. will have no option but to acquire the night travel permit after meeting the laid-down regulations.
We have not banned the movement of public service vehicles at night. The correct position, and let there be no confusion about this, please don't confuse this, is that the government, in consultation with the industry players, gazetted new traffic regulations which, among others, provide guidelines for movement of long-distance public service vehicles, including those operating at night.
The ministry demands that long-distance night travel service operators employ drivers certified by the authority, ensures no drivers work for a period exceeding 8 hours, ensure that the driver takes a break of 8 hours before the next journey, plan a journey in a manner that allows for a 30-minute break every 4 hours. The ministry also requires PSVs to have 2 drivers for each vehicle in every journey.
If they think by not applying we are going to relent, forget it. We want to bring regulations that are going to have key indicators. And the key indicator is we must not go beyond 3,000 deaths in Kenya this year.
But even as the government stood its ground, a section of bus operators moved to the High Court to oppose the changes. The operators argued that the TLB licenses that they currently hold are still operational and allow them to travel at night. They also say that the directive was untimely and has led to immense losses in revenue. But even as the bus operators fight for the review of the government's directive, the Transport Ministry says that no bus company has applied for the night travel permit, as many of them are yet to meet the requirements.
So we don't have a ban. What we don't have is compliance. And nobody has applied. Have you received any application? Not yet. So nobody has applied. And the regulations were very clear.
With these latest developments, passengers will continue to bear the brunt of the stalemate, even as government insists that this is an effective way to reduce deaths on the road. Betty Callow, KTN.
5 top police bosses were left wiping sweat from their brows after undergoing a thorough grilling session today. The Deputy Commissioners of Police were the first 5 of 23 to be vetted by the National Police Service Commission. KTN's Asha Milu attended the vetting session and now reports.
Because public interest is important.
Round 2 of police vetting kicked off.
One by one, the men and women who have been calling the shots in the Kenya Police Service found themselves on the spot. They include Benson Kibue, currently the Nairobi County Commander, though he is known for his controversial stint as Traffic Commandant. The Johnston Kavuludi team shot straight from the hip, tasking Kibue over the rise of corruption within the traffic department. And the top cop came armed with all the big words.
It is a perception, as you have rightly put it, sir, that most of the matatus or public service vehicles are owned by police officers. The magic word, sir, is enforcement. And there is enforcement.
But his big words would soon come to haunt him.
When we talk of perceptions, I have a really big problem with that perception. Are we saying that the deaths on the road is a perception, or is it a reality?
And Kibue's skeletons kept getting exposed. The Nairobi police boss was left tongue-tied when his financial activities came under scrutiny.
So the problem is that this money is not reflected anywhere in your statement. So is it possible that you have another account that you did not give us?
This transaction, the transactions that you see there, for example, the horticultural thing, the selling of cattle, that thing is done, and money transaction goes on without even being reflected over here, or particularly that money being banked in the bank. It is a hard-on transaction.
Community policing boss Beatrice Nduta, on the other hand, was left in a tight spot when questioned about opening documents addressed to her boss.
Mr. Chairman, I cannot remember actually what happened in that particular letter, but I would want to say, and very sincerely before this board, that my working relationship with that boss of mine was very bad.
On the other hand, Leo Nyongesa, the Internal Affairs Unit boss, had convincing answers during his vetting. He was also tasked of a graft among his juniors.
Through this vetting process, the National Police Service Commission aims to eradicate the rots in the Kenya Police Service that has rendered this institution one of the most corrupt and unreliable in this nation. From tomorrow, the second batch of the 23 officers to be vetted in the second phase of police vetting will take the hot seat. This will include Coast PPO Ogriadoni, but there's no guarantee whether these officers will pass the test or will take the final salute out of the service. Ashamwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
Next tonight, fresh clashes in Marsabit. Several people have been injured and hundreds of livestock reportedly stolen in fresh clashes in North Hall in Marsabit County. Suspected raiders from Ethiopia are said to have staged simultaneous raids in Dukana and El Hadi on the Kenya-Ethiopia border. Now, this comes just 2 days after 4 people were killed and 1 wounded in fresh interclan violence in Moyale. 11 camels were also killed and 29 injured when a group of herders was ambushed at a watering point on Saturday afternoon. Now, although some stolen animals have since been recovered, leaders say that tension is still high in the area. Last year alone, more than a dozen people were killed and several displaced in clashes between communities in the county and in particular Moyale region.
If I look at your money and the transformation of the National Social Security Fund from a provident to a pension fund inches even closer, but with every step comes more questions than answers. With questionable investments made especially in land and real estate, is NSSF generating as much returns for workers? KTN's Michael Karanja with that report.
The National Social Security Fund has never failed to make headlines, whether good or bad. But in the last case, there appears to be a rift between the Board of Trustees over investments being made. This time round, it is the 5 billion shilling Tasia Phase 2 infrastructure project that appears to have caused a stir. The Federation of Kenyan Employers and the Central Organization of Trade Unions are opposed to the project, raising questions of NSSF investment trends. According to FKE Executive Director Jacqueline Mugo, no resolution on the Tasia project had been arrived at by the board. Speaking to KTN via phone, she said that acting managing trustee Richard Langat had only communicated to the board via email on 18th December that approvals for the project had been granted by the Nairobi County government and was in no way a board resolution that the project continues. According to both FKE and KOTU, the project was meant to be financed by tenant contributions amounting to 920,000 shillings and not from the fund's coffers. This, she says, points to fraudulent activity within NSSF, especially when it comes to investment in real estate. Private pension schemes control an estimated 511 billion shillings, while the mandatory NSSF accounts for 122 billion shillings, an indication that workers are not confident in saving their money in NSSF. The thinking by analysts is that the fund has failed to demonstrate the desire to generate high returns for the workers.
I think the argument then is the worker is on the losing side on this one. Well, the ideal position will be where the worker is a primary beneficiary of his investment, but in this case it may not appear to be the case.
Competition for private pension schemes has also added to the fund's woes. Recently, Parliament passed the NSSF Act 2013 that will see employees contribute 6% of their pensionable salary. But the biggest question has been, why put money in a scheme that does not guarantee high returns to the workers?
Rather a scenario where the worker is motivated to invest with a pension scheme simply because of the performance, and not because he must be coerced into doing it, because then that tells you that the service provider is underperforming.
KOTU has already called on the president to step in and hold any further investments made by NSSF, as well as the sacking of current chairman Aidan Mohamed. It is perhaps these cracks within the board that point to the interference and flawed procurement process that, if not checked, could lead to losses within NSSF. Michael Karanja, KTN.
We were given funding, but it was not enough for promotions. So says the Secretary of the Teachers Service Commission, Gabriel Lengoiboni, just hours to a much-anticipated crisis meeting.
Well, scheduled to take place tomorrow, the meeting will determine the fate of thousands of students in public schools who may have to bear the brunt of yet another national strike.
The promotion of teachers and the Teachers Service Commission has been a long-standing issue, to the extent that there is a build-up of 53,000 teachers deserving.
The latest concern by teachers in the country that almost triggered yet another nationwide strike that has now been suspended pending discussion with the Teachers Service Commission tomorrow. If the latest admission by the TSC boss is anything to go by, then it will not be an easy discussion. All indications are that NAT is not willing to backtrack on the demand to have teachers promoted. TSC's hands are tied.
We were given funding to promote teachers, but this was not adequate.
According to Lengoiboni, the number of teachers waiting for promotions is not 53,000 as quoted by NAT. The Teachers Service Commission has promoted 20,205 teachers in the current financial year with a backlog of 6,675. Clearing this backlog will not be an easy task for the Commission.
And that will cost us 1,032,791,640 shillings. This does not mean that we have included hardship allowance and also salary arrears.
The nature of qualification for promotion by the teachers is likely to be a heated affair in the Wednesday meeting.
Any teacher who walks back to the classroom with the new relevant certificate has always been promoted.
Lengoiboni says this is a problem that needs to be resolved between NAT and TSC, as most teachers disregard the role of TSC when deciding on the courses to undertake.
Teachers go for the studies without the employer knowing that they are studying, and therefore they just produce certificate to say, I'd like to be promoted to a higher grade. There must be a vacancy existing in the authorized establishment. But if there's no vacancy, then it's difficult to promote you to a position that does not exist.
With the expiry of the December 31st ultimatum issued by the union's annual delegates conference to the government to promote teachers, it is hoped that Wednesday's comprehensive bilateral meeting will resolve the issues that have been raised by teachers and save the country and parents days of nationwide strike that could once again paralyze learning in public schools in the country. Linda Ogutu, KTN Prime.
Well, we're keeping an eye on that developing story for you. Let's now cross borders to the north. And chief negotiator of the rebels in South Sudan says he is confident that full reconciliation can be achieved with the government to end the crisis.
Yes, and this came as the two sides held ceasefire talks in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, for the second day.
The rebels' chief negotiator says he believes they will come to terms for the sake of the South Sudanese people.
Meanwhile, the governments of Sudan and South Sudan have begun talks to deploy a joint force to protect oil fields in the southern states threatened by the rebels.
Most of the oil fields are located in South Sudan, but oil has to be exported through ports in Sudan's territory.
Bashir's government now fears its oil revenue will be disrupted by the fighting in the south.
Both sides have been under intense diplomatic pressure to end the fighting in South Sudan, with China, a major investor in South Sudan's oil industry, urging them to negotiate a ceasefire.
Well, let's take a moment now to remind you of our big Q this evening. Now, as we showed you earlier, there are some factions in ODM, and we're asking you whether you actually do support the Young Turks in ODM.
Well, indeed, the national election will be held between February 28th and March 1st in ODM. We're asking you to support the Young Turks in ODM. Send us a yes or no response to the number 22155 and tell us what you think. You can also tweet us at Kachungira, at Ben_Kitili, and at KTN Kenya.
That's right. We look forward to your tweets. We'll be sampling some of them and giving you the results of that poll as well. But right now, let's take a look at what other stories are coming your way on KTN Prime.
Just ahead, Tycoon speaks out on City Gun drama.
Mzigo kiingizwa ndani ilikuwa inalipishwa 50 na sasa inalipwa 100, inadabuliwa. Alafu kiwanja ya ndani tulikuwa tunalipa 25, sasa tunalipa kutoka 50 shillings. Unaona wamedouble. Na pia hata kuna zingine zinalipishwa mpaka 70. Na sasa hiyo ndio malalamishi tumekuja nayo hapa, kwa sababu hiyo pesa yote hiyo ni kama profit yote tunapeana.